This is the thought for the day for Tuesday the 21st of April, and today we're looking at Psalm 44. We're going to look at this psalm in two parts, part 1 today and part 2 tomorrow with Graham. So quite often we find in the Psalms that the writer starts off with having a good moan, and then it seems he suddenly remembers God and who God is, and his perspective then changes to one of faith and hope. In this psalm, however, it seems like it's the other way around. The writer starts off in a strong place with God, remembering what God has done in the past, stating his trust in God rather than in anything else, acknowledging that the good things in his life come from God. But then he says, "So what happened? What went wrong? Why does it seem as if you've abandoned us?" So I'm going to be looking at the trusting God part of the psalm, and tomorrow Graham gets the what went wrong part. So I'd like to read Psalm 44 verses 1 to 8. We have heard it with our ears, O God. Our ancestors have told us what you did in their days, in days long ago. With your hand you drove out the nations and planted our ancestors. You crushed the peoples and made our ancestors flourish. It was not by their sword that they won the land, nor did their arm bring them victory. It was your right hand, your arm, and the light of your face, for you loved them. You are my King and my God, who decrees victories for Jacob. Through you we push back our enemies. Through your name we trample our foes. I put no trust in my bow. My sword does not bring me victory, but you give us victory over our enemies. You put our adversaries to shame. In God we make our boast all day long, and we will ever praise your name. If we read just this part of the psalm, we might think, wow, this person's got it all together, living a great life, knowing he can trust God, remembering what God did in the past, bringing his people out of slavery into their own country, getting rid of their enemies, and doing many other miracles. He also knows the only way to approach the battles of life is to trust God. It seems like a good place to be, and yet, as we will see tomorrow, he and his people are actually in a very difficult place where it seems as if God has left them. So I believe we can learn from this psalm that having a strong faith in God does not mean we won't face difficulty or even times of desperation. But it does mean that we can have confidence that God is in control and will eventually bring us to the other side of our difficulties. And there are two specific things I would like to focus on. And the first is looking back on what God has done in the past to give us hope for the future. And this, I think, can mean two things for us. First of all, we can look back at our own lives, whether it's last week, last year, or several years ago, and remember how we've seen and experienced God at work. This could be the blessings he's given us, or prayers he's answered, or how he's enabled us to grow in our faith and do things we never imagined before that we'd be able to do. For Christmas, I was given a 5-year memory book, and I will show you quickly. This is it, and it has the date at the top and then space for 5 years. So I can write what I did today, and then next year on the same day I can look back at what I was doing this time last year and fill in the next section. And since I've had more time than I normally would, I've been fairly good at filling it in. And I'm really looking forward to this time next year, when I can look back on this current time and see how God was at work in all sorts of ways, despite the difficulties. I think that will be a good place to be. I hope so. And ultimately, we can look back at the life of Jesus, his sacrifice and his resurrection from the dead, and we can know that whatever happens, we have hope in him, which of course we were able to focus on over Easter just over a week ago. And the other thing to draw out is the writer's trust in God now. He says, "You are my King and my God. Through you we push back our enemies. My sword does not bring me victory, but you give us victory over our enemies." Even though the writer may have been a skilled soldier, he still recognizes that he needed to trust God rather than his weapons. This leads me to ask, what am I and what are we putting our trust in at the moment? Is it a vaccine being found soon? Is it my ability to earn a living in the current economic situation? Is it in Tesco's having enough food? All these things are good, of course, and I hope we will have all of them, but none of them are ultimately dependable. And it's only God who holds us in the palm of his hand, who is completely dependable. So to sum up, I would like to say that if, like the psalm writer, our trust is in God and he is the one we are looking to. This will give us the strength we need when a whole lot of things happen that don't make any sense to us. We know these things will happen, and even apart from the coronavirus, there are still many other problems in the world. But being able to face these times with confidence in what God has already done is the firmest place to be.